Ooh, welcome into Between the Pylons. I'm John Camacho.
And this is Jacob Waters.
And guys, we are talking about the NFC West this week. Yeah, that's right. We're diving right in. Last week we did the AFC West, and it was a good pod. You know, I think we did a good job there. I think that's certainly something you should go back and watch. I think we upped the ante this week. We're bringing in a fantasy element to it. So after we talk about every single team, their offseason breakdown, what we're expecting for next year, our grades, all the stats that we brought into this, we did a lot of research for this guy, so I hope you guys enjoy that aspect of it. But after we do all that, I'm also going to show you my fantasy projections, and I think it's going to be fun because what I did last year, and I kind of revamped my whole system. I projected each, you know, I did my fantasy projections, and it was fun, and I had some good hits, had some misses here and there, but I think I did pretty good overall. But this year, I wanted to kind of adjust my thinking a little bit, and my first and main thought was to, instead of, you know, I went back and adjusted my stats based on my rankings last year, and I think that was a mistake. Instead, I'm going to go a little bit slower on how we do it, and by slower I mean I'm going to do it, you know, 4 a week up until you know, as we get through this process. And I'm going to use some other people that I respect in the fantasy community to look at and adjust and talk through some of my grades. So that's what we're going to do. It's going to be kind of organic. Yeah, you're going to be able to see where I'm at right now. I'm going to be totally open to change, and hey, you can comment below. Hey, I think you're too high. I think you're too low. I think you're missing something here. Let us know what you think. I think that can be part of the process, and I think a fun thing to add to the pod. So yeah, we're gonna add that in. That's gonna be a lot of fun. Man, you have anything to say before we get started?
No, ready for it.
All right, let's get right into it. The 49ers is the first team we're going to talk about. What are your initial thoughts on the 49ers as we kind of get into this here?
So the biggest question about this team is, can they stay healthy?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It just seems like Kyle Shanahan always has to deal with a lot of injuries. And last year, they were decimated by this.
Yeah.
It completely derailed their season. Yes, I was happy to see the product that he was still able to put on the field.
Yeah.
With Nick Mullins at quarterback for, I think it was like 10 games.
Yeah, 10 games.
The defensive line, losing a Nick Bosa. I'm pretty sure D Ford was banged up. He was on and off. And then, of course, Solomon Thomas was not even the product that you would want in the first place. Also an injured product at that.
Yeah.
It just did not work in anything when it came to that. And yet they still found a way to fight tooth and nail and get 6 wins in a very hard division.
Mm-hmm.
If they can stay healthy, if they can right the ship, I think this is a team that can rebound. One of the biggest rebounds, actually.
It's interesting to say that, regardless of the quarterback situation, which we're going to get into in a second. But before we do that, I do have a couple things I want to bring up, just specifically talking about the injuries. When you look at the Kyle Shanahan era, starting, you know, this past year, they were the most injured team in 2020, right? They were the most injured team in football. In 2019, they were the 6th most injured team. In 2018, they were the 4th most injured team. And in 2017, they were the 10th most injured team. And in 2017, they were a terrible roster at that point.
Yeah.
So the turnover that they've done, the roster they've been able to build has been awesome. You really look at what Shanahan has done in the time he's been there. He took over one of the worst teams in football, and they built an amazing roster from head to foot.
John Lynch too.
Absolutely. But the injuries are an issue, and I don't know. You know, do we fire, you know, the training staff? Who do you blame? I don't know. I don't know what the issue is. I know in 2018 they fired the training staff and brought in new guys. Didn't help. We'll see what happens with the injuries. You look at last year, in the 3 games that Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and Deebo Samuel were all on the field, they put together 765 yards and 4 touchdowns in 3 games.
They're electric. Yeah.
They're electric. They're an awesome team. They're an awesome offense. But you got to be healthy. Jimmy G, I mean, listen, he's good when he's healthy, but when he went out on the field very injured at points and really struggled, and and he missed a lot of games too. I think he only played in 6 games last year. Started in 6 games,
and in a few of those he was. I think it was an ankle, right, or something like that. He was hurting.
I remember doing a video on this channel, and after he played the Dolphins, and just kind of like the Dolphins decimated him, and you could just see like the way he threw the football. I remember like going back and grabbing a video from a clip from earlier in the season when he was healthy versus that game, and you could see like his entire mechanics were different because of the ankle. You could see him completely.
Foot and the one that he landed on, it was
it was completely off. So that's a real thing. But the real conversation we have to talk about here here is the Trey Lance trade, the huge trade that they came up with. And we've had enough time to really reflect on this. So I think it'd be interesting, and I want to hear your thoughts. Just go back to from the point of when they made the trade to go to 3 overall with the Dolphins. They traded up from 12 to 3 to not only them drafting, but to where we are now and your expectations for the future with Trey Lance and with Jimmy G.
Yeah, it was groundbreaking.
Yeah.
You don't normally see a trade from 12 to 3, and you don't normally see the trade happen like that in this loaded of a quarterback class. So
yeah.
we all knew that's what was happening. We all knew they were looking for the future here. They're going to try to find the next guy, and all signs pointed to Mac Jones. You and I both, as well as a lot of other people out there, felt that Mac Jones was not the 3rd best quarterback product out there, but he ran a very, very efficient RPO offense at Alabama with Steve Sarkisian, and it worked great. He has a good deep ball. So I started to kind of like, the dots were there and you start connecting them.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I mean, we're hearing that they like him. I see kind of why they like him, and I could see that why they would think that could be the guy that could run this offense. Not to really, I guess, shit on the 49ers offense as a whole, but I do not think it hinges around elite quarterback play. I think having an elite quarterback can help it.
I think that's a compliment to the offense.
Exactly. It shows Kyle Shanahan and how good of a coach he really is with being able to just keep this, if a gear messes up, you just swap it in and out and stuff. It really works. Sure. So they made the move to 3. And it was Mac Jones. And then in my head, personally, it was Justin Fields second. I really liked Justin Fields after that. But then the Trey Lance rumor started. And I was hesitant to it at first because I just didn't see that raw of a product going to a team like that right away. But then the more and more I thought about it, it was like, you really want these raw products to land in places where they're going to be taken care of, where they're most likely going to get the right approach and the right timing. I think timing is a huge issue for a lot of these younger guys when they get thrown on the field. Do they have the right tools around them? Do they feel comfortable? And with a guy like Trey Lance, who we saw at a D2 level and only in very, very minimal games at that, I'm hoping that it works out. I see a world where he does hit and it clicks because he's able to rely on the run game. He has good weapons around him, like you said, in a Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and a George Kittle. How could you not succeed with all those pieces around you? Hopefully he gets fair justice and due process in this, and I think he could take the 49ers back to where they are.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. I think year one, and this is my expectation, obviously nobody knows. I think it's going to be kind of a Lamar Jackson situation. I don't know if you remember with, when in, that for his rookie year, they threw him in small moments. Like they had a package for Lamar Jackson while Joe Flacco was still the main quarterback. And then at some point during the season, they just brought Lamar Jackson in. And there were some bumps in the road, certainly. I think the issue with this team is if you look at it, and aside from some questions at cornerback that I certainly have, and we can talk about that or certainly touch on it, I don't really have any questions for this team. Like, I know the offense is going to be good. Their weapons, their top 3 weapons, receiving weapons are awesome. I believe in all 3 of them. They're, obviously I'm talking about Kittle, Ayuk, and Deebo Samuel. Their running game, I'm not worried about it. I think whoever's in there is going to be fine. The scheme is good enough to make any of the running backs, as long as they're serviceable, they're gonna elevate. Defensive line is going to be awesome. We already mentioned the injury issues. Obviously, they have to stay healthy. But if they stay healthy, I think, having a serviceable Jimmy Garoppolo can get you to the Super Bowl and get you in a situation where you're 6 minutes away from winning like they were in 2019. And I have to imagine if you're a 49ers fan, you would take that, give me Jimmy G for the year, and give me a winning in the Super Bowl with 6 minutes left again, than, taking the chance with a very raw prospect at a Trey Lance. Now, I do expect Trey Lance to get in there. I do. I think it's going to happen.
Oh, yeah. You don't draft him 3 overall for him to not see the field this
that's
year.
The big difference.
He's going to see the field at some points.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to kind of be a gimmicky thing. They're going to bring him in. So.
Yeah, and then I mentioned Lamar Jackson. The big difference between these two scenarios, Lamar Jackson was drafted 32 overall. We know what he is now, and that's great. But at the time, if they would have missed on Lamar Jackson, nobody's losing their job. Nothing really happens. Trey Lance, you traded you basically spent 3 first-round picks and a third on Trey Lance. So yeah, you kind of need to see him. There's going to be murmurings the second that Jimmy G throws an incompletion, it's gonna there's gonna be talk. I think at the end of the day, you have the out that Jimmy G's probably going to get hurt because he has a lot, and that'll probably certainly is a possibility of how Trey Lance gets on there. I don't know. I certainly think it's interesting. There's a lot more to talk about with this team other than the quarterback, and that quarterback conversation has been done to death. So if you're good, do you have anything else to add there? Yeah, well, let's move right along here towards some other things I want to talk about with this 49ers football team, and that is just looking at the key numbers and looking at I want to talk about how unlucky they were, not only with injuries, but also I thought this was such an interesting stat. They were 3rd worst in recovered fumbles, right? And that's a stat where like recovered fumbles, it's kind of a randomy like it's just you never really know. Like it wasn't like the 49ers are bad at recovering fumbles or like they're less just skilled at something.
Bad bounces.
Yeah, exactly. That's just a bad bounce here and there. So I thought that was interesting. I also thought, obviously most injured. I did think, their defense is good, but I mentioned the cornerback situation and I want to mention it again. They're going into the season with some question marks, I would say. And Jason Verrett was one of the only cornerbacks that really stayed healthy last year, and that's great. He stood out, and it's the irony that he was the healthy one, even though he's been injured the majority of his career. But Dante Johnson, Emmanuel Mosley, Kwan Williams, Ambry Thomas, who they drafted this year, all those guys are going to have to step up, and they were serviceable last year. But I do think the cornerbacks as a whole was probably their weakest unit, and that's okay in the scheme. They play the Seattle scheme where cornerback doesn't have to be your strongest unit. You can kind of survive with that, especially if you have that defensive line. But I do think it's interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how much that hurts that defense as a whole. Any thoughts on that defense other than that? Are you even worried about that?
That's what I was going to say, is that last year I think a lot of these younger cornerbacks got exposed in areas because the way that the 49ers run their defense, through that defensive line is what helps some of these corners get more adjusted. They're not put out there in spots. They're not expected to have to guard a guy for 6 seconds because usually the pass rush can at least break down the play, and if the throw is going to be made, the throw is boom, boom, boom. Yeah. That is how good of a defensive line they are. They are a guaranteed top 10. If they are healthy and Nick Bosa returns to form, they can be a top 5 defensive line.
Yeah,
they are monstrous.
Absolutely,
they're good enough to where they felt that they could get rid of DeForest Buckner.
Yeah, they move on from DeForest Buckner. They bring in Kimlaw, who did struggle last year. I believe he was 66th in pressures among all defensive tackles. I know I put that stat in there. I could be wrong in the exact number, somewhere in that ballpark. So he struggled, but he should grow into that role. You lost to Solomon Thomas, but you brought in
Did you really lose a Solomon Thomas?
Yeah, exactly. A Samson Ubakame from the Rams, who was a very serviceable, rotational defensive player, and I expect him to be the same for the 49ers. So, that defensive line, I don't think it's really lost anything, and it is going to be special once those healthy pieces get back. It's funny to look at this team as a whole, just looking at what they did in free agency. Bring back Trent Williams to a monster deal. Bring back Emmanuel Mosley. Bring Jason Verrett, some good corners that I still think need to prove that they're still good and will continue to play at a high level or at least a serviceable level. Yeah. Bring back a Kyle Juszczyk. They pretty much excuse me, I apologize. They pretty much brought the band back together because they know this roster's good. Like looking at the losses, Kendrick Bourne, their 3rd string wide receiver, a backup corner, Solomon Thomas. None of these guys are big losses. I think they replaced all of them. Yeah, it's very interesting to see, and I think this roster has a chance to be special.
Alex Mack, by the way,
huge addition.
Their offensive line, oh my gosh! I mean, like you said, it doesn't matter who the running back is. I genuinely think you could put me at running back, and I could get some yards here and there because of how good of an offensive line unit this is. Yeah. It's a good running back by committee approach. They feed the hot hand. They get a very, very similar style build in a one-cut running back who finds the lane, who shoots the gap, will cut you for a few, and then it sets the whole offense just feeds off of that. Yeah. And that offensive line unit, they're going to feast.
I absolutely agree. And then on top of that, I want to bring this up because I think this is so interesting. We talked about the bad luck earlier. They are projected to have the easiest schedule in terms of forecasted win totals.
They're due.
And this is according to Sharp Football Analysis. What they do is they analyze the schedule based on next year's Vegas win totals, right? So they take the win totals from the future teams. So instead of taking last year, they take what the projection is this year. And, you know, the 49ers are expected to have a really easy schedule, which is amazing to say, even though, you know, the division they're in is so tough, but just they drew a lucky straw, and they have some good teams. And I think, you know, our expectations, our predictions for how their season turns out does speak to that. We both have them going over.
No, I like that too. It's good because we do it separately with our own thoughts, and then when that lines up, and it also checks out with the strength of schedule chart, and then it checks out with some of these additions on offense. It just you know that this thing's going in the right direction. Yeah. And let's go. How many years ago was it now that they were moved from the Super Bowl? Is it two now or three total?
3, because they would have played the Patriots, or no, they played the
2.
Yeah, they played the Chiefs, so it would have been 2 years ago.
It was 2 years ago,
2019.
And
it was Mahomes'
you know,
first
and
one.
then you go into what happened last year to 6-10 based off of injuries. Yes, it was very disappointing overall. I think that is the outlier. The 6-10 season is going to be the outlier, not the Super Bowl season. They're going to get this thing back on track, and they're going to continue to go up from there. Yeah. And if Trey Lance hits, watch out, because if you can get a quarterback of his likeness, of his build, to hit, and you're able to still have that same team that can find yourself down in the Super Bowl with 6 minutes left. Yeah. Watch out. Yeah. That's all any team's looking for.
I absolutely agree with you. Before we move on, I do just want to I want to do a couple things before we get to the fantasy. First, I want to look at their draft as a whole. They have a couple of third-round picks, second-round pick. Got a guard out of Notre Dame who could certainly start, Aaron Banks. Got Trey Sermon, who I know you're higher on than I am.
I like him.
Ombre Thomas, who we mentioned already. He was a third-round pick, not a fourth-round pick. I apologize. So added some pieces and really, I think, addressed some needs. Offensive line, adding another need. Corner was certainly a need. Running back, they actually traded up for him. I didn't see that. I didn't see him as a perfect fit, and I certainly didn't see that as their biggest need. But an interesting pick. Did you want to touch on that at all? Or what are your expectations for him?
I really like Trey Sermon a lot. When it comes to a fantasy outlook, it's a running back by committee approach, and you never know how it's going to go. And as much as I like Trey Sermon, I could have listed teams that he would have gone to. He does not fit the one-cut style role that I think of when I think of the 49ers and how they do their backs. He's a little bit more of a bigger build, a little bit more of a downhill runner sometimes, and I mean, I see why they would do it. I think he's a great talent. It just doesn't fit the bill that I'm used to seeing.
Yeah, but honestly, dude, because I will say this, and it's funny because listen, I wasn't super high on him. Did not think he was. I thought he was a 4th to 5th round guy, so I wasn't like far off. He was drafted at the end of the 3rd round for the most part, so I wasn't incredibly off on him. But I certainly wouldn't have guessed the 49ers.
There's a spot he can hit though. It's
he's gonna be really good on this team. So like I stand by my assessment, but I also say he's gonna be great. Like,
he's gonna get touches.
Exactly.
Yes.
I will say though, and I did find this stat in my research, and I just wanted to bring it up. He was ranked 11th nationally when he was untouched after 2 yards. So that's awesome. Averaged 10.9 yards per carry if he wasn't touched within the first 2 yards. He was ranked 108th and averaged 0.4 yards when he was touched at or behind the line of scrimmage.
Doesn't break tackles.
Does not. Stat. Yeah, exactly. I think that is a big stat, but that stat kind of speaks to exactly what he's good at and exactly why I think he'll fit with the 49ers, because this scheme is going to get those first 2 yards open. This scheme is going to get the first 5 yards open.
He's a downhill. Let him get going.
Exactly. So I think there's certainly some upside there, and just it's going to depend on injuries and things if he really gets the full run of that offense. But certainly like a later round fantasy option that I think has a lot of juice and certainly could be very high upside.
I can see it happening.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's finish this out. Do you have anything else on the card? I think we exhausted everything that we really wanted to talk about. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, it's weird talking about this division because I like every team.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I just don't want that to be a phrase that I just keep saying over and over, but I really do like what the 49ers are putting on paper. A lot of games in this division are just going to come down to some of those situations, the turnover battles. You got to be able to take care. You got to be able to look at splitting at the worst in some of these cases, because Cardinals twice, Rams twice, Seahawks twice, vice versa for every single team out there.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I'm not going to bury the lead. I'll tell you right now, or tell everybody listening, you already know, I have 4 teams in this division with a 12-5 record. and you know, three teams in
Yeah.
this division with a 12-5 record, and obviously one goes 8-9. So yeah, I'm very high on on 3 different teams in this division. Honestly, I'm high on every team in this division. One team draws the short straw, but like, yeah, the 49ers, I don't know how it's going to go. There's going to be some very, very interesting divisional games this year that say a lot about, you know, how the playoffs are you know, broken down, and a lot of other things.
I feel the exact same, man. That's why I was bringing up those small games, those, you know, those Sunday night ones when the 49ers are going to Seattle, got to take care of business.
Yeah.
You drop some of those here and there. Next thing you know, it takes your 12 win to a 10 win, and then the other team in your division. This is going to be a dog eat dog division.
Yeah,
the best one in football.
Yeah. Oh, I don't even think it's close. This is certainly the best.
There's arguments. I like the AFC North a little bit with the, you know, Steelers, Browns, and Ravens going at it, but this one has 4 teams that could legitimately make some noise. Can
I ask you something? This is off topic on what we were planning, but I do want to mention it. I'm big in, you know, what is the first four games of the season? What's the first 4 or 5 games of the season? How does the team get off? And does that, because I think that can have a good impact on the rest of the season, but also in a division that we're projecting to be so tight. Obviously, I mentioned I have 3 teams going 12-5, but you also think that's going to be a really tight race.
Yeah.
Do you think, like, San Francisco getting to play Detroit, Philly, Green Bay, Seattle, and Arizona, those first 5 games, specifically really those first 3 games, in Green Bay possibly without Aaron Rodgers, do you think that's a huge leg up in just the way this entire season could play out? Meanwhile, Seattle has to play, you know, the Colts, Seattle's Titans, brutal. And Minnesota. Those first 3 games, yeah, that's a tough road. Those games are all winnable, but they're also losable. And then the Rams having to play Chicago, Indianapolis, and Tampa Bay. Again, 2 games that I would certainly say are very losable, also very winnable. I would say as far as the first 3 games, San Francisco has a lead. Is that a bigger thing in my head than it is in yours, or am I overthinking it a little bit to say that could be the difference maker?
It's all about the narrative that can be spun on the season as a whole, and if these guys have the mental toughness to adapt to that. Yeah. So for a team looking at like Seattle, if I'm Pete Carroll, you know, I'm going out there and preaching win every single game, of course, but next thing you know, you're looking at a 2-4 start. There's a chance.
I have them starting 2 and 3. Yeah.
There's a chance. So then at that point, you got to go, guys, that was just kind of a hard bit to chew right here. Mm-hmm. We got some good stuff coming. Let's get this thing going. Let's get this back together. Mm-hmm. Whereas the 49ers, I think they get a little lucky with Detroit and Philly right off the bat, and then they get a Green Bay team that has to travel all the way over to the West Coast and catch them. And who knows, they've kind of been going back and forth. I know the 49ers really, really have the Packers' number when it comes to recent matchups. That's a great point, yeah. So that gets them a 3-0 start. Looking at Seattle, then we get to see the division games come. Who knows?
Seattle,
momentum and mental toughness are huge understatements in the NFL when it comes to that. Yes, if you can start out on a roll, the hot team wins.
Absolutely. We saw it with Pittsburgh last year. I don't think anybody would sit here and say they were really a team that deserved to go 11-0, 10-0, whatever their start was.
Go back and look at that 11-0, I could find 4 or 5 that are like, oh, they're losing that one.
Exactly. And granted, hindsight is 2020, but they got off to a fast start.
Yes.
And momentum built, and they won a bunch of games. Obviously, wheels fell off at the end, but yeah, I certainly think getting off to a fast start is a big thing, and I don't know. I just thought it was worth mentioning. Let's move right along to my projections here, and I'm going to let you look over. This is your first chance to look at them, and I'm going to kind of break it down about like how this works, just to explain to the audience here. What I did is I did give Trey Lance 70% of the touches, and I gave 70% of the production, and I gave Jimmy G 30%. And this is kind of how I break it down. I like to do it based on market share of touches, receptions, yards, and then that kind of feeds into the amount of yards they actually have, as opposed to projecting yards first and then giving market share. It's just how I do it, and I think it's maybe unique. I don't know how other people do their projections, but that's how I do mine. Do you maybe it is bold to say Trey Lance gets 70%. I just cut it in half, 70 and 70 for passing touchdowns, passing yards, versus Jimmy G getting 30. That's basically me saying, after 3-4 weeks, it's Trey Lance's show.
No, the math check. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I mean, let Jimmy G kind of do the thing.
Yeah, the standard
have a weird start.
Yeah, the standard rookie starts in week 5 kind of vibe. Exactly. That's kind of what I have for him. Yeah. I gave him a good bit of
16
interceptions.
to 10, you see him struggling. a little bit.
Yeah, 16 and 10 touchdowns. I gave him a good amount of rushing yards and rushing touchdowns as well. I don't think he's going to blow it away, but I actually went back and looked at a Lamar Jackson, looked at some of the other rushing quarterback, or, again, I'm not comparing him to Lamar Jackson. Please don't hear what I'm not saying. But from a statistical standpoint, I wanted to go back and grab running quarterbacks that utilized it a lot earlier in their career. I do expect that from Trey Lance, so that's kind of what I looked at. And those kind of numbers are really where I got, the bulk of that. Yeah, it's not going to be impressive. I do think he's going to struggle with interceptions early. I do think that 16 and 10 is about where I kind of expect it. But I'm giving him 3,000 yards, or just under 3,000 yards. So that's pretty good to start your career. Obviously, good bit of rushing production. Yeah, I don't know. I do you disagree with that? Do you hate that?
No, I don't think that's too ambitious for Lance at all. I think that's very achievable if he's able to get the starts going. I mean, I think honestly, you might be a little too harsh on him in some areas, but then again, he's very raw. I mean,
and I also kind of was harsh in the concept that I do think Jimmy G is going to have a good bit of rope. So I gave him that, starting week 5 kind of thought process, but also it's very it's so hard to project the quarterbacks when you don't know who's going to start week 1. You know what I mean?
I think also when you look at evaluating rookie NFL quarterbacks, we have become so accustomed to seeing them come in and light the world on fire right away.
Yeah.
We are so quick to have that split-second snap judgment. Like, we saw Herbert. Mm-hmm. Oh, my God, he's a superstar. Yes, I do believe that, but look at a guy like Tua, who kind of just had more of a very conventional rookie season. It wasn't atrocious.
Yeah,
but compared to Herbert and a Burrow, of course not. But, there's the whole thing about Peyton Manning's rookie season, the whole thing about Drew Brees. There's a lot of amazing quarterbacks out there who get thrown out their first year and get chewed up and spit back. Yeah. Why are we so quick nowadays to just throw them away in the trash? Yeah. I feel like that's how it is nowadays. It's such a you hit or you don't right away.
1 to 2 years and that's it.
And that is literally
it.
I
mean, you look at Dwayne Haskins, you look at Rosen. I mean, granted, now we have hindsight and we have a couple of years where it's like, oh, well, they're shitty. Maybe they wouldn't have been if they had 3 or 4 years instead of 1 to 2.
It's different. It's just different to think about how situational based it can be. Maybe they get one good start under their belt, and then that can just keep the whole thing going. Who knows? I hope it works for Trey Lance.
We mentioned it with starting a season strong and how that can kind of carry over the rest of the season. I mean, that could be your entire career. Especially nowadays. You don't get the Peyton Manning. I mean, unless you are, projected to be
like Trevor Lawrence will have that rope.
Trevor Lawrence will.
He could go out there and absolutely tank.
Most guys don't get that.
Exactly.
Yeah, most guys don't get that, and if you suck year 1 or if you don't really show up to start and you just end up being it's tough.
That's another thing. You almost said average.
Yeah.
They're not looking for average anymore.
No. Jimmy G is average.
The way that NFL GMs are evaluating now, if you do not have a quarterback from 1 through 8, and I would argue you could do a 1 through 10, you're not competing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's going to be very, very hard for you to actually...
You have to have a roster like the 49ers.
Exactly. And look at where that got them, though. That got them to the point where they still lost the guy who was a 1 through 10 quarterback.
Yeah.
Who, overall roster, the 49ers were a better team that year, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
the Chiefs had the quarterback.
Chiefs had the quarterback, a couple pieces here and there, and they were able to put it together. Yeah.
Teams are looking for the 1 through 10.
Yeah,
it makes it so competitive. I want to mention Raheem Mostert right here. I love what you've done based off of this. I mean, looking at him getting 1,100 yards, 9 touchdowns, and then he has almost 500 receiving.
Yeah.
That is a fantasy asset.
That's him starting, and that's him not getting hurt. I guess that's kind of, and I did spread out the level a little bit with, obviously I did give Trey Sermon some touches.
No, but 50% he has out of this running back by committee.
He's the clear starter, right? Yeah. So that was absolutely my thought process. Okay, he's the clear starter. Let me give it to him.
I'm trying to say, would you pull the trigger on him in fantasy football?
Okay, yeah. I no, I wouldn't.
Not early.
Well, okay. What's his ADP? Give me a round.
He's 4th round. He's 4th, 5th round.
Yeah, I'm probably going wide receiver. Just the way I usually draft, I'm probably going to let somebody else do it. There's a couple of reasons for that. Listen, this is obviously projection. I'm going to have him high. The thing is, I'd rather have. This maybe sounds dumb. I'd rather have Jermichael Hastings for free, but essentially knowing he's, maybe farther down the roster, but I do believe in his potential, his ability in the system to produce if he gets that opportunity. It's almost like I'm not a zero running backs kind of guy, but for the 49ers specifically, I'll go zero running back because I know Jeff Wilson, if he gets the touches, he's going to be awesome. He's going to be a fantasy asset week to week. I know Trey Sermon, if he gets the touches, he's going to be a fantasy asset week to week. The problem is it's different guy every week. And Raheem Mostert's been the only guy that's consistently that guy, but he has consistently been hurt too. So this
right.
is assuming health. You know, I think that's the biggest problem.
And there's a lot of times where, like you said, a Jeff Wilson comes in and he was the good change of pace.
Yeah.
He was working. So Shanahan recognizes that at a split second. Yeah, go out there. So now Jeff Wilson goes from getting 4 to 6, meaningful touches. He's going to get near 10 this game just because of this is how he was able to change the dynamic. Yeah. It works like that. It really does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kittle, of course, keeps it going. Honestly, I can see him getting I really like Kittle.
Give him 140 targets, 104 receptions, and 1,100 receiving yards.
No, of course.
And basically 6 touchdowns.
The targets are there for sure. I think if for looking at a Trey Lance, he could be the security blanket.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely agree. I was expecting a little bit of pushback, or at least wondering. I gave Brandon Ayuk the edge over Deebo Samuel. I gave Brandon Ayuk.
I like Ayuk.
Okay, yeah. So we're on the same page there. And granted, I know Deebo just had one injury, a riddled year, and maybe that's why everyone's turning their head backs. But I do think Ayuk's the better player. I gave him 152 targets, basically led the team in targets by a small margin, but certainly led the team in targets. Gave him just under 100 receptions and just over 1,000 yards. And Deebo, has a serviceable year, certainly fantasy relevant, but I do think Ayuk is the guy to have in fantasy this year.
I agree. I'm willing to pull the trigger on Ayuk. Yes.
Wow, that's awesome. I do have one thing, and I thought we might touch on it. It never came up, so I wasn't gonna push it. But just looking at this, I'm wondering what your thoughts are, and I'm gonna switch over to this graphic here. Who's the number 3 for the 49ers?
I have heard rave reviews about Mohamed Sanu.
But Sanu was in and out last year.
Yeah, Sanu's a traveling journeyman. He's struggled at times.
Ever since he was traded from the Falcons for a 2nd round pick, he was cut by the Patriots. He was
I blame the Patriots
he went to the 49ers and was cut last year too. So because the only reason I know that is because I owned him in fantasy, and we're in kind of a deeper league. So I remember grabbing him, thinking, oh, this guy could be a sneaky guy on a hurt team. I actually think it's Richie James.
I'm not buying into the Richie James.
I'm buying into Richie James.
He can be serviceable, but it's Mohamed Sanu for me.
Okay, interesting. Any thoughts on our boy Jalen Hurd? I put his name up there.
Gotta stay healthy.
Yeah, but just for anybody listening, he's a guy I know you played against. I didn't play, but he's in our little world.
He's our little football world. That's where Jalen Hurd comes from. He was running over us in JV football.
Exactly. So he's the only guy that we've at least seen in real life. For the most part.
Make it to that next level.
And then he's had injury issues in his entire NFL career, but I'm hoping he gets a chance. I'd love to see him at least have a shot to do something. He's a guy who went from running back. He was just a monster in high school, really good, and he would have been drafted as a running back in college too.
To be honest, I blame Butch Jones.
Oh yeah, the Butch Jones wouldn't let him switch to wide receiver.
Demolished him. Yes, and Alvin Kamara.
Yeah,
I mean. Look at where both of those guys ended up being.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, so I thought that was interesting. I would love to hear in the comments, who do you think the number 3 wide receiver is? We obviously disagree. It doesn't have to be one of the guys on this list. There's a lot of guys on that roster right now. Obviously, cut downs are going to happen. There could be a dark horse that we're not even thinking of. Love to hear your thoughts there. With that being said, I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else to talk about on this team or fantasy?
I think we covered them.
All right, perfect. Let's move on to the Arizona Cardinals. As I'm putting all this up on the board, will you tell me what your thoughts are on the Arizona Cardinals this year? I know personally I feel like this might be the team that's the odd man out a little bit in a loaded division, but what are your thoughts here?
Man, so that's the thing, is that they are an odd man out, but they checked all the boxes. They had a really good offseason. I am still a very, very big believer in J.J. Watt and what his veteran leadership can do in a locker room for a lot of young guys. The departure of Pat P, it's going to hurt. That secondary is going to be hurting a little bit, but overall, the team got better. But my record doesn't indicate that, and it's hard for me to line it up. The only way that I can justify it is saying that this is such a crowded, tough, and cramped division where some of the other guys, the 49ers, injuries, let's say that those get better. The Rams' acquisition of Stafford, that would greatly improve them in my eyes, and we still have Seattle. I see them as 4th in the division. I see them as a very good team, though. Really looking to see Kyler explode. But also, if he doesn't, that kind of starts to fall back on Cliff, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't agree more with the Cliff thing. I really couldn't. I look at this team and you know, just looking at, you know, they did do everything right. Yeah. And they did, you know, they did put it together. But listen, actually, you know, I'm going to go off script a little bit because I wanted to bring this up a little bit later in the conversation, but I have this stat. We're going to put it up on the screen right now. This is the target share for DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk. That's not right. That shouldn't be the target. Like it should not be in that
where
little
you line
bubble.
them up on X and Y.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they don't move, and they have the exact same route tree. There's very limited variation at all. I mean, you see, DeAndre Hopkins should be threatening every single part of the field. And granted, I get there aren't a lot of routes that really let you go, you know, the exact opposite side of the field. I get that, but the intensity in one specific spot and really not branching out a whole lot anywhere else or not having any consistency anywhere else, I think that's a huge miss in an offense. That Cliff Kingsbury is supposed to be this revolutionary. And to be totally honest, I don't think I believed that. I don't think you believed that.
No.
I think a lot of people didn't believe that, but that he was built by the Arizona Cardinals. That's how it was supposed to be sold to the fans.
He was the young
offensive mind coming from college. Never mind he got fired and he had Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback and had a losing season. Never mind any of that. But we're bringing him in. We're bringing Kyler Murray in, and we're going to have a special offense. And it's not right now. It's not. And you know, before, you know, I want to bring in one more stat that I do think is interesting that kind of speaks to, you know, maybe the other side of that conversation a little bit, because I do think I will give him credit that he has adjusted his game plan a little bit here and there. And what I mean by that is last year he ran 2 tight end sets 31% of offensive plays. That's not air raid. That's the opposite of air raid. Air raid is 4 wide receivers and usually no tight ends. He ran 2 tight end set because he didn't have the wide receivers to match a four wide receivers, even if he, you know, maybe he just doesn't believe in it altogether, but at least he's not trying to put a square peg in a round hole. So like, I'll give him credit for that, but it's not a creative offense. I do believe the offense lives and dies by by Kyler Murray. And we actually just did an interview with Nick, a fan, hopefully he's listening. And he mentioned, Arizona he basically said exactly my thoughts on Arizona Cardinals. It's all Kyler Murray. I do believe that. I think it's all Kyler Murray.
No, the offense will go as far as he is allowed to, and I honestly think this offensive scheme is holding him back.
Yeah.
You know, I like the way that they do the RPOs. He had over, I think it was 1,200 yards off of RPOs that goes into his rushing and passing stats off of those plays. I mean, he's electric. You know, it speaks for itself. DeAndre Hopkins' first year, he accumulated almost 160 targets for a first. That is insane.
It's ridiculous.
And to think that, you know, so that's why whenever you showed the target distribution chart, I will give a little bit of leniency with D-Hops. But then again, it is D-Hops. I mean, we're talking at worst, number 3 best wide receiver in the NFL for me.
Yeah,
at worst, exactly.
There's an argument he's the best.
This is a guy who does more than just 2-yard stop routes, who does more than just swing routes, who does more than just digs and ends. He can go anywhere. He can take the number 1 and make them look like they shouldn't play football anymore.
Yeah.
That's just what he does. I want to really see them get going. Mm-hmm. It feels like they're being held back. This should be the year that they blow it open and they really start to make the next step forward.
Yeah, listen, I absolutely agree. And really, you can see it right here. D-Hops, 115 receptions, 1,400 yards, and 6 touchdowns. The rest of the Cardinals wide receivers, 143 receptions, 1,477 yards, and 9 touchdowns. That's crazy that like how close that is. That should be that close, right? Like,
no, that's not the ideal way that you want the distribution to go. But then again, if I had D-Hops and I had an arm like Kyler did, exactly. So it kind of lines up in my head, hand in hand. I just it really hurts me to know that they've gotten better in areas, and I want to see them be better, but the record doesn't indicate that. Yeah,
I do agree with that. Moving forward, you know, I mentioned the 2 tight end sets and how the offense doesn't really match. Yeah, let's look at their depth chart right now, and specifically wide receiver. Obviously DeAndre Hopkins, but they did bring in an AJ Green to add to that offense, and they brought in a Rondell Moore in the 2nd round. Andy Isabella probably a bust, right? Christian Kirk. probably going to be a starter, but also I don't think it has the ceiling that a lot of people thought they had. It's crazy they have they spent 4 second-round picks on wide receivers because that's what DeAndre Hopkins went for too. It's ridiculous that's how their wide receiver core works out. But it speaks to what Cliff Kingsbury wants to do, and maybe this is the year he really gets to do what he wants to do, which is run that air raid for wide receivers, play the you can still have the RPOs and all those other things. There's creative ways you can do that with a Kyler Murray and also spread the field. Maybe this is the year. You have AJ Green on the outside. You have Christian Kirk on the inside. You have Rondale Moore on the inside. You have DeAndre Hopkins on the outside. Like there's a lot of things that can be done.
Rondale Moore is the dude,
year?
man.
Is this the year?
It could be.
It could be. It really could.
You both don't believe that, though.
No, don't believe this is the year for air raid system. I don't believe this is the moment that the air raid system really gets introduced in the NFL in a real way. I think I've seen it enough to know that it doesn't work consistently. I'm not gonna say it can't work at all, but consistently, I do have questions. Just while we're looking at this depth chart, I also have questions about the running back situation. You look at you look at Drake is gone, and Drake underperformed. Really, the running backs in general underperformed. If you take away Kyler Murray from the rushing stats,
it's atrocious.
It's below average. It certainly is.
They're a bottom 20 team. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. They're a bottom 20 rushing team. If you take away, it's actually 18th in the NFL in yards per carry when it's excluding Murray, but every other stat excluding Murray is worse than that. So I mean, it's not good by any means. What are we expecting from the running back situation here? With obviously, you have a Edmonds, who I do like, out of a small school, Fordham, I believe, who has a chance. Obviously, they brought in James Conner from Pittsburgh, but I do believe he is over the hill a little bit. Benjamin, 7th round pick last year that a lot of people like. What are your thoughts here?
I mean, I think that it's going to be one of those feed the hot hand things. I like Chase Edmonds when it comes to maybe a late round, like fantasy PPR kind of move. But when I'm looking at actual product on the field, I could see James Conner doing in the single back formation, but they really don't line up a lot of that. They run a lot of heavy shotgun. You mentioned the 2 tight end sets. Yes, they will do that, but I just don't believe James Conner's the guy for that.
No, I don't believe so either.
And that's kind of the problem.
I think they took a Kenyon Drake who went over the hill, and I certainly believe wholeheartedly he is over the hill and really just fell off a cliff last year. I think they sidestepped to a James Conner. They didn't improve, in my opinion. They sidestepped because James Conner, I believe, is he's tapped too as far as
I think he could
high
be
end
more
production.
Than what Kenyon Drake wasn't, but then again, I don't see it eclipsing much. Like you said,
I don't either. I think every time I saw Chase Edmonds on the field, he was so much more explosive than a Kenyon Drake. I expect Chase Edmonds to be the guy, but every time Chase Edmonds has gotten the full grunt of the workload, he's been injured soon after. So there's some injury concerns there. I add on top of that, do you know how many rushing attempts he has in the inside the 5-yard line?
No, I don't know.
1. In his entire NFL career.
Runs a lot there.
Yeah, but in his entire NFL career, Chase Edmonds has had 1 rushing attempt inside the 5-yard line. That's crazy. That takes away. Yeah, exactly. That takes away his fantasy outlook, certainly to me anyway. And you just wonder. It's just an interesting conversation. I think there can be fantasy value here if you hit on the right guy. For me, it's going to be Edmonds or Benjamin for free. I think I will probably take a shot at an Benjamin super late / free in our keeper league that goes 20 rounds, exactly. In that range. That's what I'm talking about. But yeah, I think there value here, or should we stay away?
No, I would stay away because I just don't see, even if they hit the ceiling that I have in my head, if they hit that ceiling, it still does not line up with where they're being taken. Yeah. Take someone like Benjamin late. When it comes to their wide receivers, on the other hand, I would dip into some of those depending on where they go. Yeah.
No, and I do get that. Just taking a look at the offseason at a glance here. Their biggest move was trading for a Rodney Hudson, and obviously they.
Damn, you said Rodney Hudson over J.J. Watt.
Well, yeah, J.J. Watt is a great player and all of these things, but Rodney Hudson, I think, still has real juice in the tank. Granted, both of them are over 30, so you can say what you want to say. Rodney Hudson was arguably a top 5 center last year. Yes. J.J. Watt was not arguably a top 5 anything last year.
Injuries.
Yeah, okay, but injuries the past 3 years. I get what you're saying. Come on, guys. I don't hear what I'm not saying. J.J. Watt is an all-time great. I love J.J. Watt. This is not me shitting on J.J. Watt. If you knew me in his prime, you would know how much I fucking love J.J. Watt. He's one of my all-time favorite players of all time. of all time. He really might be in the conversation for favorite non-quarterback, non-Dolphin in the NFL, period. But at this point in his career,
contribute still. I do not think he is done.
I'm not saying he's done. I'm not saying he's done. But I do think him, AJ Green, Malcolm Butler, all of these additions.
Oh, yeah. AJ Green and Malcolm Butler.
Older guy. Yeah, I put them all like in the same, same tier as far as their ability to produce. JJ Watt brings a little bit more from a leadership perspective, I would say. And I'm not taking anything away from those other guys, but like JJ Watt is JJ Watt. So I certainly think, he can add some pieces. I get what you're saying. He can add some pieces, but he's not going to be an every down threat. He's maybe a third down rusher or things like that. Like I don't think he's a guy that's.
You think he's that limited this year?
I don't think he is. Yeah, I don't think he's a guy that we're going to hear a bunch of like. I don't know, and I could be wrong on this. But yeah, I don't think he's going to be the guy. I'll put it that way.
I don't think he. I mean, they have Chandler Jones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chandler Jones.
He had injuries last year, but yeah.
Chandler Jones is the guy there. But JJ Watt, man, listen, those names on paper, a lot of those, I wish they could have been able to keep Hassan Reddick, honestly.
Yeah, Hassan Reddick is a great player.
Exactly. Yeah. I think JJ Watt's got a lot of stuff left in the tank.
Okay, so you think he has a lot more than I do?
He has 2 years of elite play left.
Elite, yeah. I think his elite play is long gone. His elite play is long gone. So he's 2 years of serviceable play left. I think it's
injuries that have kind of strayed away from that.
At this point, those injuries piled up for 3 straight years. I mean, come on, that's gonna
very random.
That's gonna hold up.
How do you feel about a Von Miller then? Age wise, they line up close to the same. Like,
I think Von Miller probably has more in the tank. I do, because his injuries have been. I
would rather have a Von Miller right now than a JJ Watt. But I'm saying when it comes to both of them being injured and aging.
Yeah, neither of them are going to be the top of their game.
JJ.
You always give me shit for being too quick to toss older players.
JJ Watt is not a top 5 defensive lineman anymore like he was.
Yeah, but I
can admit that.
I would say he's not 15. He's not top 15. He's not top 20. I wouldn't even say. There's a lot of good ones in the NFL.
There's a lot of great young ones. There really are. So, I mean, it's hard for me to put a number beside it, but I do think that he can contribute to them.
Okay.
More than just a locker room presence.
Fair enough. Yeah, and I'll give you that. But I will stand by, I think the big signing, the big move was Rodney Hudson. I think Rodney Hudson helps their team more than anybody else in the free agent department.
That offensive line needs it for Kyler, yes.
Yeah, and their offensive line, it's quietly good. I think it's ranked 13th by Stat Football Analysis. And then
throw in a Rodney Hudson, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Rodney Hudson adds to that. They also, I believe, drafted one at some point in the draft. So you look at that, and that's one of my questions. Will the addition of aging vets at key positions pay off? I don't know. I do think, did this team quietly just get older? I mean, I don't know.
They did.
They got much, statistically, they definitely did. But,
they did.
Are we worried?
Can a Malcolm Butler step up and really play? There were a lot of times for the Titans where he wasn't there's a reason that they let him walk.
Yeah.
You can't afford to pay the old aging guy that money that he was for. And a lot of Malcolm Butler haters out there would say that the man made a career off of one play.
Yeah, I don't think that's accurate, but he certainly he made a name for himself on one play.
He made a name for himself and was able to get his payday because of that.
He is more of a household name than he would have been, but he's still for the years that he was a starter for the Titans, he deserved to be a starter. I will say that.
His rise to fame at the Patriots was after he got that catch, the interception. I mean, he was very, very good on that team for many years.
Yeah, I do agree. Yes. I do agree. Let's take a look at their draft. Just a quick glance here. First round, getting a Zaven Collins at 16 overall, which I think we were both surprised on. Obviously, we did the live stream. Certainly surprised us, but. The more I looked at it, the more it made sense to me. Obviously, this is 2 years in a row they drafted a linebacker in the first round, so we'll see how that plays out. But I think that's how they want their defense to run. They want it to run through the middle of their field. And Zaven Collins is very versatile, can do a lot of different things. Obviously, Rondell Moore, we mentioned. Marco Wilson, I think is quietly a really good corner. I know somebody who I really respect, and Chris Sims. He had him as a top 5 corner in his rankings or whatever. And granted, that's take that for what it is.
Wilson.
He wasn't a top 5 in my rankings. I'm not saying
I do not like Marco Wilson.
Okay, fair enough. I'm just saying there's all these people out there that think he's really good. So that's all I'm
good
adding.
At throwing shoes and losing games against LSU.
Okay, his brain. He might not be mature, but he's a good talent. He's a good physical talent. Is all I was saying. I love how you say stuff like that, and it makes me want to defend him more. I don't know what. I don't know what it is in my brain that like immediately wants to fight you, like not fight you, but like
speaking on behalf of Florida fans and their disdain for him because
I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only.
Colin,
imagine.
You're out there, bro. I hate him too. It's okay, man. It's okay.
Just interesting to say. I wanted to throw that in there. But yeah, you know, good draft overall. I do think, you know, I mentioned they drafted an offensive lineman. I was wrong. They didn't draft an offensive lineman. It would have been, I think, a better move. And I think, you know, cornerback was probably their biggest need. They got one in the fourth. We'll see how that works out. Yeah, this team is good. I do think it got better. Did it get marketably better? I think that's kind of the theme of what we've been talking about. Do you have anything else to add here before we get into like the fantasy talk here?
No, run it.
We're good. All right, let's throw in the fantasy conversation while I'm throwing it on the screen right now for you guys. I'm going to let Jacob look at it for the first time, and I'm just going to kind of talk through some of my thoughts here. Kyler Murray obviously getting he actually took a step down in passing yards, but still 4,000 passing yards. Gave him a huge step up in rushing yards. So totals over 5,000 total yards, 30 passing touchdowns, eight in the I gave him pretty good stats. Maybe I overblew it a little bit. Let me know what you think there, but I do think this is assuming health, by the way, and I think a big conversation, something that I wanted to bring up, but I'll bring it up now here. When you look at the splits from Kyler Murray from pre-injury, he injured his shoulder in week 11 to the rest of the season. It's marketable. It really is. Pre-injury, he had 9 rushes per game, 7.6 yards per carry, 62% success rate. Post-injury, 6.1 rushing yards or rushes per game, 5.1 yards per carry, 60% success rate. That's significantly different. And then, you know, pre-injury passing, he had 7.6 yards per attempt, 3.7 sack rate. That's pre-injury. Post-injury, he had 6.6 yards per attempt, so a whole yard down, and 5.8 sack rate, so significantly higher sack rate as well. Yeah, the injury really did affect him, and it's one of those things that I don't think was talked about a whole lot during the season. It's something that I kind of really found going back and researching it and all these things. I think I'm assuming health for the entire season, and I think if you take the split from the first 11 games and take those numbers and bring it out for 17 games, yeah, it's going to be these kind of numbers, and that's where my thought process came for these numbers.
Yeah, well, and I also have to add in that other game. You know, I know that doesn't make an overall big difference, but then again, we did the math on the 5,000 yards. So, you know, primarily 5,000 yards for any quarterback is a landmark milestone to hit. Yeah. Guys like Drew Brees kind of made it more common in household, but before that, it was unheard of. So now you do it, it averages out to about 270 yards-ish a game. That's really not all that crazy. So at first I saw that and was like, that's semi-MVP year. Adding a few more touchdowns, that's MVP for Kyler.
I gave him 38 touchdowns. Both rushing and passing, 38 touchdowns, 1,100 yards.
I mean, it's impressive.
That's a lot.
It is. That's a damn good year. That's a top 10 quarterback year.
Oh, I think he is a top 10 quarterback. So yeah, absolutely.
And that's where it's at.
And this is him again. Granted, I did this and still have him winning 8 games in the season.
You have D-Hop's receptions right around the same where it was. The yards kind of go up a little bit more.
I pretty much copy and pasted last year and then adjusted for not copy and pasted, but gave it very similar market share, and then adjusted obviously the number of yards based on last year, and obviously the 4,000 passing yards. That's the piece of the pie.
Rondale Moore with a 61 reception, 600 yard, 5 touchdowns. That is really good.
Like that?
That is really good for a rookie.
I thought that was I thought that was a reasonable milestone for him to hit too.
I think that's really good. I think that's something that he could do that has Christian Kirk going. That might lose my job.
That puts him in the slot. That has him in my little world. That has him winning the slot receiver role, because that's what he has to play. Yes, he has to play slot, right? Obviously, Christian Kirk might be playing slot, might play outside. It depends on what happens. Obviously, he lined up majority in slot, as did Andy Isabella. I don't foresee him having a huge issue fighting off Andy Isabella. I also added in the possibility, like if you look at all the wide receivers that got some stats, I'm projecting more for wide receiver stats. I'm projecting them to really give the air raid system a shot. I really am. So yeah, I certainly have that expectation. Gave Max Williams, the tight end, a fair numbers. I feel like for the most part.
That's some people. I think you might have if this reaches the Arizona Cardinal Nation and whatnot. They're very high on Max Williams.
Yeah,
they're very high on some of looking at his fantasy production going forward.
I think there's an interesting conversation there with Max Williams, because if you look at what Dan Arnold did last year, and Max Williams was on that roster, there's really no other tight end that's really on that roster that we can really expect to take a step.
Food out of the mouth.
Yeah, exactly. And granted, maybe there is, and maybe there's a guy that ends up doing that, and that I don't know about. It's certainly possible. But last year they ran a lot of 2 tight end sets. I mentioned 31% of their snaps 2 tight end sets. I'm expecting that to go down. I'm expecting Max Williams to be the main tight end on the forward, on there. But you brought in AJ Green for a reason. You brought in a Rondo Moore for a reason. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is going to eat. Obviously, Christian Kirk, he's not just going to go away completely. Andy Isabella, I think, will be the odd man out. He's proven to me that he's a little bit of a bust, so we'll see what happens there. So yeah, Max Williams, I actually do like Max Williams, the talent. I remember watching him last year and thinking he was, I didn't think he was marketably worse than a Dan Arnold, who I felt like got all the praise for that team. So yeah, I certainly felt like I gave him respect, but also I'm just not projecting the tight end to be a huge part of this offense, I guess, is what I would say. But now that you mention it, and I hope that some Cardinals fans really do get to see this and can put their thoughts in, because I'm not against, adjusting the numbers. As I said at the top of the show, the whole point of us doing this is I'm doing this is my kind of rough draft of the yards. I did put a lot of thought into it, and I did put my research, but I'm not this is not my final product. So if you're in the comments shitting on me, that's fine, but hey, just let me know what you think. You don't have to really shit on me, you know what I mean? Because this is not my final product, and that is certainly something to think about for Max Williams there, if I should adjust that. And I think a lot of it's going to have to do with what formations do they run. Are they going to go to more 4 wide receiver?
Well, if they do run that and they do commit to this air raid, I mean it would cut
him off, and that's kind of what I was thinking there. Anywhere else you want to go with this?
No, I like it a lot.
Chase Edmonds, James Conner, conversation.
I didn't even mention them just because I guess it solidified it in my head that I'm not touching them.
I gave them 30 and 22%, so I did give Chase Edmonds the respect that he is the number 1. But I split it close enough down the middle to where, I really disrespected James Conner as far as production, because I gave him. That's honestly now just looking at it, I'm gonna have to change that. I'm looking at 22% rushing attempts, 15% rushing yards, and that comes out to 125 attempts for 388 yards. That's not right, so I'll have to adjust that a little bit.
Yeah,
but
there'll be a little tweaking. But at the end of the day, I'm looking at that fantasy points per game over there too, and I know that can be tweaked a little bit north or south. But at 13, looking at Chase Edmonds, man, you just can't do that.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah,
and you gotta look at those weeks where it fluctuates, and he does get that touchdown, or he does get that little bust of a play, and goes up to 20. And then there's weeks where he's gonna hit
3,
it could
8.
Be bad.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's good. There's gonna be the ebb and flow there, and but maybe the running back. It could be interesting in if you're running that 0 running back system, and you can take a shot at one of these guys, but. Yeah, no, that's not the system I run. I try and draft my running backs early and often. Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to say before we close the book there on Arizona?
Close them.
All right. Let's move on to the Rams, and I know this is going to be your favorite conversation to have. I know how you feel about the Rams. I'm going to let you take it away while I put all this stuff up. Get on your high horse and start speaking.
Oh, let's go, Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford, I love you so much. Rams, I love you. Y'all are my second favorite team. I have always been fond of the Rams and what they're able to do. This defense is a damn beast, and they're not going away. They were first last year. I think they're going to be top 5 this year. I would argue first, but it's always hard to put that right there where it's at. Aaron Donald, we know what we're getting. Jalen Ramsey, talk your shit. I got to see an interview of you recently talking about the D-Hops. It's the only guy to ever eclipse 100 yards on him. And immediately after the game, he messages his agent, his dad, and one of his close friends and says, I got my ass cooked. Let's get to it. I love the work ethic there. I love the whole team. And I truly think that Matt Stafford is going to take this team beyond what we can. I think they're going to shatter stuff, man. They're giving the Chiefs everything they got.
Really?
Yes.
You think
so? Let's go back a few years, and we got to see the greatest game that we've ever seen in our lives at 54-51 or whatever it was with the Chiefs and Rams. That was Jared Goff.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me twice. Yeah,
you give them Stafford. I don't think I'm hearing enough people talk about it, man.
Yeah, no,
crush it. This is the team that I am too high on. I can admit that I am overly ambitious on it, but I can show you as to why I don't like Goff and how much better in areas where Goff was not that Stafford is. And I know you have some good input on that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you're saying here. I think this is the most there's so many stats on Goff that I have here, so bear with me a little bit on me shitting on Goff a little bit.
Let it rip.
Goff ranked 32nd in yards per attempt and 29th in passer rating when he was under pressure. Stafford ranked top 5 in both of those categories, so already a huge step up
for a great.
You look at the offense as a whole, and I do think this has a lot to do with Goff. Scored less than projected points in 11 of 16 games. That was tied for worst in the NFL. And the way that works is that the projected points is from Vegas, right? So it's the way Vegas sees the offense or sees how the game should be played. You know how you have the line and then the score, or like the over under, right? Like so you can do the math there to see what the projected points for the team is every single week. Scored less than that every single week, and there's a reason for that. The reason this team won so many games last year was because they were holding opponents to 6.7 points per game in the second half. That's incredible and speaks to the defense. Also speaks to an offense that struggled to score because it wasn't like they were blowing every team out of the water. With that kind of defense, they should have been. I have a lot more, but I'll let you chime back in here. It's amazing the difference just from a statistical standpoint, how different this team is, or how different this team has a chance to be with a Matt Stafford. Just on a personal level, you look at Goff, he's declined every single year. And one more stat against Goff, and then I'll put it to bed. 55% of Goff's yardage on the season last year came after the catch. 45% came in air yards. That's a flipped stat. That should not be accurate. That means, he really only accounted for 45% of the passing yards that his team put together. Oh yeah, and he is a part of one of the better offenses in the game. Oh yeah, and he's declined every single year since he went to the Super Bowl. It was time to move on. It certainly was, and they were able to not only move on but bring in one of the most I would say the most underrated quarterback in modern era. And I'm not going to speak the history of the game, but at least in my time of really studying the game, the most underrated quarterback I've seen.
You're so right on that.
Yeah.
It's weird me being a Vikings fan looking at Matt Stafford and saying, Lions, we're not supposed to like each other. I have always seen that guy show up and do what he's supposed to do on a team that was just devoid of helping him out for so many years.
Yeah.
And now he's helped. Sean McVay had so many. I bet that he was sitting there watching film. McVay was, and he would just be like scratching his head because he's like, how do I do? Like Goff can't make that throw.
Yeah.
Goff can't do that. Goff can't add that fold to our offense. Stafford, you can, whatever you want to do, Stafford has the arm and ability to be able to do that. They have a great offensive line. They have amazing wide receiver weapons. Very good tight end. Tyler Higbee's looking to make that next step, and he could be a breakout star, especially with Stafford looking at him like that.
Yeah.
I am a little hesitant on the running game. I am not so high on the Cam Akers train. I like Cam Akers, the product, a lot. But when I looked at some of the yards per carries, depending on where contact happened, he didn't break a lot of tackles. He struggled with that early on. And maybe it was because they weren't so threatened by some of this play action, run stuff.
He ran into heavy boxes constantly. No one was scared of Goff.
Goff was one of the most heavily blitzed quarterbacks because you knew that you could get to him. You knew you could get in his head and had him rattled. So I'm hoping that doesn't show Cam Akers necessarily as much as it shows just the hardship of the situation as a whole. And having Stafford being able to spread this field, being able to open it up more, less people in the box, Akers should thrive.
Yeah,
that's the only area I'm scared.
We'll talk about it more when we get into the fantasy conversation with my projections in fantasy. I do expect Stafford to be a big reason as to what Cam Akers is able to do this year. I think it's actually going to be a huge step up. Their entire run game is going to be a step up. I actually have Stafford's numbers are good but not great. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. But the only reason is because I think they're going to be winning a lot of games, and I think they're going to control the game. They're not going to need Stafford to throw for for 5,000 yards to be in control, he will still be a dominant player. I have so much hope for him. I want to see him do great things. I want to see him win a Super Bowl. I think Stafford, he is in that conversation for me as one of the most talented quarterbacks to have not won a Super Bowl in the modern era. Again, I'm not talking about Dan Marino and all the greats of the past, but I'm saying in the modern era right now playing, one of the best to have not won one yet, and I do think he deserves to win one.
I hope he
been
does.
Stuck on a bad team for a long time, and I don't disagree with anything you said as far as what the Rams can be. This team is set up to be very successful. We'll just see how high they can fly. I mean, that's I put it on there for a reason. But looking at offseason at a glance, obviously we hit on Matt Stafford. I do want to hit on a couple of the losses they've had, because you can talk about the additions all day long, but they did have some major losses to this team. First of all, in the secondary, losing a John Johnson and a Troy Hill. I think those are pieces certainly helped out the secondary. Obviously, we know the star of the secondary, but those were really good pieces and really capable starters that they had to replace, and I would argue didn't replace. Obviously, I think their depth is going to be not questioned, but they're going to have players that were on their team last year that are going to step into a starting job or at least be asked to. And we're going to see how they're going to work out, right? So that's certainly a question for me. And also, obviously we know Staley went over to the Chargers. We talked about that last year. You don't. I might disagree with that a little bit, but also look at all of the other position coaches that moved on. Offensive lines coach, linebacker coach, pass game coordinator, Shane Walden. He's now the offensive coordinator of the team we're going to talk about in a minute with the Seahawks. I'm excited to talk about that. Run game coordinator, like all of these things. It's interesting. I think it's fair to say it's certainly interesting. They lost a lot of pieces as far as coaching staff, and a lot of that had to do with Staley moving on and poaching that coaching staff. Do you think that has an impact?
Man, I mean, at the end of the day, it's always different. There's going to be some adjusting, but I think these are small pieces to the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. The picture's still intact. The picture's still there. It runs through McVay. He's the guy who started this whole trend of having this young, exciting offensive mind. I mean, he's the guy that made that's why Cliff has a job, honestly. Yeah. That's why Zach Taylor has a job, honestly. I really believe that is that they were trying to find the next hot offensive mind. A lot of guys are getting the call now because of McVay. Yeah. McVay knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and I do agree with that. I also think he's started this trend, and maybe not in the entire NFL, but certainly in the NFC West, of really devaluing first-round picks. Look at what the 49ers did, this year. First, it was the Rams trading basically 3 firsts for Stafford, but really 2 firsts for Stafford and giving a first to get rid of Goff's contract. But also, they've traded their first round picks for years, right? And they've traded them for wide receivers, corners, whatever. You look at the Seattle Seahawks. They traded two first round picks for a safety, and then we have the 49ers move up to 3rd overall, basically spend 3 first round picks and a 3rd on a quarterback. But is that really that crazy when we just watched their division rival spend 3 first-round picks on a Matt Stafford, or spend or another division rival spend 2 first-round picks on a safety? Is it really that crazy to make those leaps? I know I'm maybe getting off of the Rams conversation a little bit, but I think it was all started with the Rams and their mindset of we'd rather have proven commodities than first-round picks.
I've always felt that way.
Yeah.
If you're able to hit, look at the Rams' success, look at Seattle's success, the 49ers' success. These are teams that pick from 20, 23, 24, wherever the playoff line starts and on. Yeah. You really, I'm not saying that they doubt the guys in their room, of course, with their scouts, but you really need to hit on those picks. There's a lot of times that those picks miss. Those don't get to contribute to what they are.
They're all lottery picks, right? Yeah, at the end of the day, they're all lottery picks.
Sure, you could land it. Sure, that's where a guy like a TJ Watt has gone and passed. But if you have to show me how minute of a guy that you can pick in that 20, whatever spot it is, to get that, give me the guy that, like you said, I know what he is. I know what this product is. I'd rather deal with having to get the chemistry to work in the locker room than having to draft the guy and have him hit, and then also have to deal with the chemistry, because no matter who you get, that's a factor.
Yeah. No, I certainly agree. Before we move on to their draft, because I do want to talk about their draft for a second, I do also want to talking about losses, the additions and losses. And by the way, this is an older chart, so if I'm missing anybody here on additions or whatever, we did this during free agency, and I'm just kind of throwing it back up here now because it's still relevant. Other than obviously Matt Stafford, they re-signed Leonard Floyd, lost a lot of guys. know, and granted, you know, most of these guys were rotational guys. You know, Gerald Everett, second string tight end,
depth pieces.
You know, depth piece at defensive end. But I would argue they didn't replace those depth pieces with you know other depth pieces. So I do think there's something to be said about a team that it's built top heavy, and the Rams are very much built top heavy, and that's why I wanted to bring this up with talking about them trading for a lot of picks. Not only are you trading for the player, you're trading for that contract too. You're paying the guy, and in a cap, you know, in a league where the cap space is real. You aren't able to pay other guys like a John Johnson, a very serviceable safety that you could say maybe, you know, a top 10 safety or maybe top 15 safety. A Samson Bukum, I can never say his last name, sorry, but a rotational defensive end who has certainly been productive. A Gerald Everett who's certainly been productive. A Troy Hill. Guys like this who are productive pieces but aren't superstars. You know, you can't afford to pay them anymore. It's essentially,
keep the train rolling.
It's essentially the exact opposite concept of the way the Patriots have built their team for years, which is, you know, the Patriots would much rather have all these pieces than the nice, flashy, you know, corner or, you know, whatever it is.
The Rams are 2 injuries away from having $60 million of cap not play.
Yeah, isn't that scary?
Yeah.
3 injuries away of having over $100 million in cap not play.
That leaves $80 million or whatever it is to field a team left.
Yeah, exactly. So there's certainly pros and cons to this approach, but I'm glad there's one team doing it. I'll put it like that. As somebody who doesn't, I'm glad there's one team.
It got him close 1 year with Goff, and I would put X amount of dollars that if you substitute Stafford for Goff in that Super Bowl, I know who's winning that Super Bowl.
Yeah. Hey, I agree, and at the end of the day, when they do trust their ability to grab depth pieces in the draft, that you know mindset, that philosophy makes a little bit more sense. Let's move on to the draft. Let's look at their draft here. Starting in the second round, grabbing another wide receiver, Tutu Atwell. I know we were both a little hesitant on that move. Grabbed a linebacker in the third. You know, had 3 4th-round picks, so that's where they're getting their depth pieces, right? Yeah. Like you're getting to grab a Jacob Harris. Who's going to be a tight end. He's not a wide receiver. I'm sorry. He played wide receiver in college. He's going to be a tight end. You know, you grab a cornerback, you grab a D tackle, all guys that like you could go to the slide we talked about in a second that was on the board a second ago. You know, all these guys could theoretically replace, you know, these rotational pieces.
That's the role that they're going to be coming in.
Yeah, exactly. So hey, if you are good enough at drafting 2nd through 7th, fuck your 1st-round pick. Go get superstars in the 1st, and take your shots in the 3rd, 4th. You got 3 4th-round picks. If those guys hit, the 3rd-round pick hits, awesome. I do want to touch on their 2nd-round dilemma here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Wide receivers in the 2nd round past 2 years. Van Jefferson and Tutu Atwell in the past 2 years. Yeah, I don't get it. Neither of them, I think, were valued at that range, or you know, coming into the draft. Van Jefferson got the start, you know, in the first 2 weeks of the season over a Reynolds, and lost the start after the first 2 weeks of the season because he was not ready for the lights. Tutu Atwell, you know, he's a gimmicky player. He's not going to be a superstar. I don't think anybody thinks he will be. Do we?
I mean, there's a small threshold where he fits that role, but other than that, it's either he does that or he, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And granted, I'm not saying like they have a plan for him. They'll use him. He has speed. He will have a place on this offense. I don't see a world where he ends up being the wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 1 down the line. You know what I mean? Like exactly. That's not his upside, is I guess how I would say that. So yeah, certainly worth mentioning there. And any other thoughts on this draft or how you would approach this? What your thoughts are?
I mean, I'm glad you mentioned the 2nd round thing, because as much as I like the Rams and as much as I like this thing about trading picks and keeping things rolling and going, I don't agree with the wide receivers in round 2. You know, I don't agree with that. I don't think that was the right move. But, you know, I mean, I really like a Bobby Brown out of Texas A&M.
Yeah.
I think that's a guy. I know they lost Brockers. Mm-hmm. Not saying he's a Brockers, but he's a guy that can come in on certain downs when you need fresh legs, high energy, high motor, and replace some of these guys. Yeah. I wanted to see them target the linebacker spot. They did it in the 3rd with Ernest Jones. They did. I wanted to see them do it in round 2 and 3, though. I'm not going to lie. I'm a really big believer in, if you have a weakness, go get it, go target, and see if you can make it happen with that.
Make it a strength.
I feel like wide receiver was one where they kind of were already wrapped up and good. I know they lost to Josh Reynolds, but, you know, I guess that says more about Van Jefferson than it does anything else.
I think so. Yeah,
that means that they view that as a weakness.
And also, there is a world where, hey, I can sit here and say I want teams to be able to quickly recognize their mistakes and not be afraid to correct them.
That's
like,
true as well.
Don't sit around and spend 3 years trying to make a square peg fit in a round hole, right?
If
it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If you didn't like what you
saw in Van Jefferson, sure, he's not out. He's not totally out of a job right now. This is a make it or prove it year, and we're going to see what happens with the added competition.
Yeah, listen, I absolutely agree. I think that's a really good place to put it. Anywhere else we need to go with this? I'm just going to look at the rundown, see if I'm missing anything. No, I think that's it. Let's move on to our fantasy talk.
Yeah.
Are you good with that?
Yeah,
Anywhere else you want to go? All right. So listen, as I've said, and the only reason I'm repeating it for those of you watching the podcast, the only reason I'm repeating this because for the people watching the full podcast is because we're going to clip this out. So I'm telling people that are just watching this video, this is a work in progress. What we're doing is I'm showing you my projection for this team stats right now. I withhold the right to change it, and I'm going to change it. Like, I'm going to adjust these numbers a little bit, but I wanted to put it out there, and I think it's fun to kind of talk about it and talk about the process, the thought process, and my opinions can be changed. So if you're looking in the comments and you think something's wrong, let me know what's wrong. What should be changed? Where am I off on this number? I mean, you know, I certainly think it's interesting. Jacob is looking at it for the first time here, so I'm going to kind of talk through my thoughts here. I have Matthew Stafford at 4,600 yards. You said you wanted him to hit 1,000 or 5,000. Yeah, the reason I don't have him hitting 5,000 is honestly because I think he could be sitting out some fourth quarters. I think they could be running the ball games over by halftime kind of conversation here in a lot of games. I think they're that good, and I think they will beat down on certainly bad teams. Not saying that will happen every week, obviously. But yeah, I don't think, you know, this team, when everything worked in that 2019 season when they went to the Super Bowl, the team did run through Todd Gurley. And granted, that was the best player on the team. Now the best player on their team realistically is Matthew Stafford. So I'm not expecting that. But I do expect the run game to be a big part of this team. I'm taking a big shot on Cam Akers. I'm projecting big numbers from Cam Akers. I certainly am projecting big numbers from Matthew Stafford too. Nothing negative here at all for Matthew Stafford, but maybe not 5,000 because I don't think they'll need to throw the ball as much as, you know, maybe a team that's in a lot of close games like late games.
If you don't have to play hero ball like you do at Detroit.
Exactly. So that's my thought process there.
I think he's hitting that though. And with that being said, I think that would give them 2 1,000-yard receivers in Woods and Kupp. Love those guys. Higbee, I think Higbee's going to do a little bit more on the yards there. I'm just very ambitious on the Rams as a whole. And maybe I'm a little bit more skeptical of what a Cam Akers could do here. Not saying I don't believe in it.
No,
do they have Deshaun Jackson, by the way?
Yeah, they have Deshaun Jackson.
As in the old
Deshaun Jackson.
Wow,
they have him. He's in there. It was kind of a quiet signing. He's not a guy that I think at this point in his career we're really expecting a whole lot from. But I definitely have him. You know, I have him getting 32 receptions.
No,
you know.
I was just making sure that was the right
that's
one.
the guy. Yeah. So just to touch on a couple of things, because just for those of you listening to the podcast that aren't hearing it, I do want to make sure you guys know where we're at. Tyler Higbee at 41 receptions, 500 yards essentially. I thought that was fair. I really did. I don't expect the tight end to become the biggest part of this offense. I think last year they ran a lot of 2 tight end sets and really incorporated their tight ends more because they really only had 2 wide receivers to look at, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. And I'm not saying that isn't the case now with adding, Van Jefferson going in his second year, Tutu Atwell drafted, Deshaun Jackson. I do think between those 3 guys, they can run 3 wide receiver and make it work. And I think they'll be comfortable with it, right? Yeah. Between those 3 guys, somebody has the opportunity to at least come out of it and maybe make it, and again, Tyler Higbee will still be on the board or still be on the field a lot this year, but I don't expect it to be like the biggest statistical year. And granted, those kind of numbers out of a tight end, give him a couple extra touchdowns here and there, that's top 10 tight end numbers, like the way the tight end game goes.
After the big 3 or 4, it's a drop off.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Woods and Kupp, I gave just the way I broke it down. I gave Kupps a couple more targets, a couple more receptions, but I gave Woods a couple more yards and a couple more touchdowns.
He's primarily a deeper ball.
Yeah, and Woods is targeted more in the red zone than Kupp is, so that's why he wins the touchdown battle there, and I think that's why he overall wins the better fantasy option there. Although I do love Kupp, and I think they're both good fantasy options. Looking at it right now, I might bump it up to give them both 1,000 yards just because I believe they're both 1,000-yard receivers.
That's where I'm at. And I mean, that's splitting hairs though.
Yeah,
and I can 30 and 75 on one. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And I can take away some yards. I get it. I'm bullish on Cam Akers. Just looking at it, 300 rushing attempts. That's a lot. But granted, there's an extra game. So like this is assuming health, an extra game. 300 isn't as crazy as it was last year. 1,300 rushing yards. Yeah, man, I get it. I understand. I'm saying he's going to have a great season. I am. I believe it. I really do.
That's finishing as I don't know if that's RB1 numbers.
He'll be those are RB1 numbers for sure. Yeah, those are certainly RB1 numbers. Yeah, I mean, and I'm giving him 10 touchdowns. I'm also giving him receiving, production too. 45 catches, 277 yards, so getting about 2 catches a game, just here and there.
I hope he does it.
Yeah, I'm hoping so too. I know. Listen, I don't care if anybody knows. I know I have the 6th pick in our keeper league, and if he's there, I'm gonna take him.
I can't blame you.
Yeah. So, and granted, if he's not, he's not. But I believe in Cam Akers. I really do. I think he has severe upside. I believe I believe in the talent. I always have. I saw the talent last year, especially when he started to put it all together at the end of the year. And I do believe going into this season, he will be the number 1. He will be the clear-cut starter on a team that on an offense that I think is a lot better.
Yeah.
So that was my thought process. Anywhere else you want to go with this?
No, it's good. Stafford Lombardi.
Stafford Lombardi. Hell yeah. You're so high on Stafford. I love it.
Good.
Hey, Rams fans, let me know what you think about those numbers. Am I too bullish? Am I not bullish enough here and there? Very interested to hear on your thoughts on how this season's going to go. Let us know in the comments. But let's move on to the last team that we're going to talk about on this pod. It's been a long pod. Thank you so much for listening if you're still here with us. Seattle Seahawks. We just did an interview with Nick. We talked about the Seahawks already a little bit, so we're going to be, you and I are going to be rehashing some things that I've mentioned, but I'm very excited to talk about this. We're going to dive into the stats and the free agency because they didn't really do a lot this offseason, a whole lot. What are your thoughts here on the Seattle Seahawks?
They're a team that can go as far as Russ is allowed to take them, and the reason I say allowed is will Pete Carroll pull the reins back again? In some areas, I can't blame him for what happened, but then again, this is your franchise guy, and this is beyond a franchise guy. This is Russell Wilson we're talking about. Perennial top 5 quarterback year in, year out. You will go as far as he is allowed to take you. I hope that he is given full control with DK and Tyler Lockett. Chris Carson, I've seen a lot of good things about him. They brought in a Gerald Everett, which is a tight end spot that they were really missing last year. I know they had a Disley try to step in and kind of do some things. Rick Olsen was banged up and hurt. So it just wasn't what it was, but Gerald Everett is a physical body. He's an able body, and he should be able to take care of business.
Yeah, listen, I certainly agree with that. I look at, you mentioned, as far as they're allowed to take them. I didn't even mention
the defense. I didn't want to.
Yeah, it's a whole another world.
Yeah.
You mentioned as far as they're allowed to take them, man, the Russell Wilson saga is so interesting, right? Obviously, there's been the issues this past year, which are very well, they're very well documented, and we know about that, and apparently that's all patched up, and I believe that to a certain extent. I have said that I do think there's a real chance this is Russell Wilson's last season with the Seahawks.
I think he's good now. I think he did it more for hoping they would just address the need of offensive line. They really didn't do it though.
Yeah, they didn't do it. They didn't give him. They didn't give him an inch even. Really,
they got Gabe Jackson. He's a starter.
Yeah, I mean, and I like Gabe Jackson, but I don't know. But looking at last year. And we mentioned it. Well, we talked about it. If you are a listener to this pod, you know really what happened. I've broken it down a handful of times. I'm gonna do it one more time with a couple extra stats here. Week 10, week 11 was really the shift, right? Week 10 they play the Rams, had a couple bad interceptions. Russell Wilson played poorly. No other way to say it. Week 11 they play the Bills, same kind of conversation. Russell Wilson played poorly. In the first 10 weeks, the let Russ cook section of the season, they passed the ball 64% of the time. They averaged 9.6 yards per attempt and had a 61% success rate. In the last from week 11 to the rest of the season, their passing rate was 57%. They had 6 yards per attempt and 57% success rate. Yeah. Significant difference. They stopped throwing the ball nearly as much. They started running the ball a lot more in neutral situations. They started basically they started trying to play their offense to complement their defense struggled. In that Rams game that we talked about, the Bills game, week 11, Russell Wilson, there were some turnovers and things like that, and the defense couldn't stop anything. I believe they gave up like 44 points, and that is not the type of football that Pete Carroll wants to play. He can't get his mind around that, even though you have a quarterback and honestly a team that is built in the same mold that probably can be with them. If you want to get into
they can do shootouts
race
with anyone,
if you want to get into shootout race, I would say, if they play 5 times, they're liable to win 3 or 4 of those games against the Bills if it's just a straight shootout, race to 50 points, right? That kind of game. They're liable to win those battles. Russell Wilson can do that. They lost it this time against Josh Allen, but that was on the back of a couple, I believe there was a lost fumble. There was a couple interceptions. There were some issues there, but it's just so interesting to see how they switched from the first half of the season to the second half. They really put Russell Wilson in a bind. They put training wheels back on him essentially, and the season struggled because of it. Yeah,
it's what led to them fizzling out and the Rams being able to beat them with a John Walford, what was his name?
Yeah, John Walford, yeah.
Yeah. It was bad. You were the Seattle Seahawks. You're supposed to be able to compete in a lot of different areas. Yes, it was the number 1 defense against an offense that got held back, and I think that was the problem. I understand being held back, but hopefully this year going forward, the problem that I have with them is that I do not think the defense improved in the areas that I wanted to see them.
No, I don't think so at all.
That is primarily the secondary. I'm okay if your secondary is a little lackluster. I'm a big believer in having a big, beefy front 7 that can help a younger secondary grow.
Yeah.
I do not see that from Seattle right now, though. I don't.
Yeah, they move on from a Shaquille Griffin. They bring in Witherspoon from the 49ers, who great, but not really even to the level of what Griffin was, and they did not address it in any other way. Okay, they grabbed a guy in the draft. They had 3 draft picks. I believe they grabbed him with the 4th or 5th round pick. They grabbed a corner. We'll see what happens there. I'm not trying to shit on him by any means, but there's no there's certainly question marks about the secondary. There's question marks about the defense as a whole. I like Poona Ford. I like some of the pieces they have on the D-line. But their secondary still a big question mark for me. And I think it was one of the bigger question marks we had going into the season. And I still feel that way now, which is not a good way to feel, I would say. You know what I mean? Just looking at, the additions and losses here. And again, as I've said throughout this pod, this particular graphic is an older graphic. So if we're missing something here, I do apologize. But we made this right after free agency. So if there's late additions, we didn't get it all. But, lost some pieces here, and they added, I said Witherspoon, as I said, but really nowhere else on that defense did they really address in free agency.
No, and they were getting tore up on the passing game, man. When it came to first down passing yardage allowed, they were I think they were 30th on that. And then it came down to third down passing yardage allowed too. They just could not get off the field when it mattered most, and it was bad. It affected their overall defense.
Yeah,
I believe that it's the same. I could say the same thing for Atlanta whenever we get to that team. Their rush defense was good because their pass was so bad, and not even saying that their rush defense was good. It's just statistically good because
statistically it looks good. Their rushing yards.
It says 5th.
No, it wasn't 5th because they were the 5th best. It was 5th because they were the 31st worst at passing yards. And if you can run and pass on a defense, you're going to pass on them, right?
Exactly.
So I absolutely agree. This team right now is going to have to run through their defense. And it's crazy. We're saying all these negative things. We're talking all this thing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day,
a very good team.
They're still expected to win 9.5 games. I have them winning 12. You have them winning 10. We're both over. I'm not betting on it. I can't. I don't know what's going to happen. But
not going to bet on it. But
I believe in Russell Wilson to win 10 games by himself.
I do too.
I really do. I think Chris Carson's a fine running back that they brought back.
That offense is elite. And they can compete with the best of them.
Absolutely agree. Look at this stat. DK Metcalf and Lockett combined for 48.6% of team targets, 47.2% of its receptions, and 55.5% of yardage. That's enough. This is arguably the best duo in the league. And granted, that adds questions to, okay, what do they have now? What do they have behind a DK and a Lockett? That's certainly a question. They draft the wide receiver in the second round, Eckenbridge, I believe. 190-pound speedster out of a small school. We'll see what happens there. It was a questionable pick, as a lot of Seahawks picks are. I mean, no offense, but yeah, it certainly was. And we'll see what happens there. Obviously, David Moore's gone, moved on to the Panthers. So you know, there's certainly an opening there. But they have, I say all that to say, they have one of the best duos in the league. They have a really good wide receiver.
They'll be okay.
They'll be fine. And also the red zone scoring is third in the NFL last year. So they're going to be putting up points on the board when they get down there, when they get the opportunity. That's all we have. We're not going to talk about the draft because there are 3 picks. There's not a lot to bring up there. They really didn't do a lot of moves in free agency. The biggest thing was Russell Wilson. We already touched on that. Cornerback being a huge need. I guess this is the last question I'm going to ask before we move on to the to the fantasy aspect and really close the show out. What's the philosophy going to be this year? Are they going to go first 10 weeks, or are they going to go the last 11? What's the concept here?
Yeah, no, honestly, if I'm going to be a realist about this thing, I think they're going to use the run game a little bit more instead of the first 10 weeks of letting Russ cook. I do think it's still his offense. He's still going to be cooking. But if they can have a healthy Chris Carson and really feed off of that, I see no reason as to why complimentary football gets viewed as negative football. It can be a great thing. I want to see it work. I do.
It's not... I get it.
I'm just saying what I think. What I want them to do is let Russ cook. What I think Pete Carroll's going to do, because that's what Pete Carroll has done.
Yeah, I was going to say that's where I'm at with it.
Yes.
Yeah, I do agree. I think there's going to be some more. I'm very, very excited about their pass game coordinator. They brought in Shane Walden, who was the pass game coordinator for the Rams, and they're bringing him to be the offensive coordinator. I am super excited about that. I think you're hearing some things from the wide receivers and from the offense there. They are all saying it's so complex, that it's intricate, that's complicated, and that's good. That's what I want to hear now. I don't want to hear that week 2 of the season then it's too complex and these guys aren't able to run the right routes and things like that. But I would imagine
they had a very basic feel last year.
It was so simple, and this is my litmus test. If I can watch the snap and know what the fuck you're gonna do, it's too simple, because I'm not that fucking smart. I'm not that smart. I didn't I study the game, but I was never taught the game by a professional. So there's no reason I should know what the fuck you're gonna do. And if I've watched film and know what you're gonna do, it was too fucking simple. And I'm gonna tell you right now, it was too fucking simple. I think Shane Walden has a lot to bring from a Rams offense that was really good. I don't know. I'm expecting big things there. I'm very hopeful there. I'll put it that way. Let's move on. Let's move on to fantasy, right? And this is the last thing we're going to talk about here. Let me grab it here. So you guys are watching this right now, just so you guys know, this is a collaborative act. I want everyone to, in the comments, to let me know what you think about my grade here. What do you think that, am I too high, too low? This is Jacob's first chance to look at this. So I'm going to let him look, and I'm going to talk for a second. I obviously gave Russell Wilson 4,800 yards, 35 passing touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Awesome numbers. I give him a tick down in rushing yards, because I think as he gets older, you're going to see less and less of the scrambling aspect of Russell Wilson, although certainly enough scrambling, it's not completely out, completely gone. Gave Chris Carson good numbers. I did account for some injuries, because it's been too consistent that he misses 3 or 4 games, so I'm expecting that, which is why Rashad Penny gets in there, which is why I do have a DJ Dallas in there a little bit. I have other Travis Homer, who came from Miami. I have him in there a little bit, getting some yardage, getting some touches here and there. Obviously, I did kind of copy and paste a little bit as far as what happened last year, as far as market share for DK Metcalf and a Tyler Lockett, getting over 50% of the targets, about 50% of the receptions, and over 50% of the total yards. All of those things I brought over from this year. Do you have any issues with that? Am I too low, too high? Where are you at with this?
I like Russ's numbers. The 1,410 for DK, that's top 5 wide receiver for sure.
I believe he's the top 5 wide receiver.
Exactly. There's a lot of people who do, and myself included. I think that he is just nipping at it right now. And with some of these other guys getting older, I think he's going to be able to assume that role going into this season. That definitely will. Tyler Lockett at 1,200. A lot of passing yards. But, then again, though, we can look at the same thing last year and look at the target share. that's literally just basic math. Take what Russ throws for, and then the target share, equate that to the same thing, and that's where the yards go.
Yeah, and that's
just how it works.
That's my thought process. And really, when you look at last season, I'm going to pull up a different thing on our end. I'm not going to show it on their end, but just looking at what Tyler Lockett did last year. Where is it? I'm looking for it right now. Sorry. Tyler Lockett performed last year. I don't understand why he is being hated as much as I guess he is. But you know, put up 1,000 yards. I have their entire passing yardage going up. I have both players getting a bump up. But overall, Tyler Lockett had 100 receptions for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. So like, I'm not hating. I don't feel like there's any reason to hate on him. Maybe I'm a little too bold. Maybe I'm a little too high on the numbers there.
A little bit, but if you are into the whole thing of Russ getting to do more and pass more, then
and also there's an extra game, so there's a little bit of room to be too high. But yeah, I certainly think I certainly did kind of go into it with that mindset. As much as maybe I have questions on what they're actually going to do, I did go into it with the mindset that Russell Wilson's gonna utilize the pass game coordinator from the Rams. That offensive coordinator is going to come in and bring a different spice and really utilize Russell Wilson's talents and maybe bring another level. And that is very hopeful thinking, and I'm sure Seattle fans are going to love hearing that. But they've probably heard it before. Brian Schottenheimer at one time was lauded as being an offensive mastermind. He wasn't. So we'll see what happens there. Certainly been wrong before. We'll be wrong again. I don't know. Looking at this, I'm automatically thinking maybe I should adjust down a little bit the yards for the wide receivers. But other than that, like, I don't hate anything that I'm seeing just as like getting a second look at it, second pass at it after doing it last night. What about you? Do you give me something you absolutely hate?
That I absolutely hate.
Yeah. Make one up if you can think of it.
I was just looking at Gerald Everett, so let me compare that to the Tyler Higbee thing. I would want that flipped. Gerald Everett, I don't know if Russ is going to be using him as much. If we see a 1,400 and a 1,200 from these two, Gerald Everett sitting at 700 yards and 5 touchdowns right there.
Yeah,
I look back to the Rams. I would want to see Higbee in that spot. I think that the way that team uses their tight end versus what Seattle does with theirs.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Picking on something though.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think all those numbers come from, honestly, maybe too many. No, I don't think I'm off on like the total receptions or anything, but maybe just too many yards from Russell altogether that like I'm giving Higbee.
I mean, if you give Russ that many yards, it does have to go somewhere.
Because I'm giving him 16% of the market share, and I do think the market share aspect is right. I think that's really what I have to do. I'm gonna have to nerf Russell Wilson's total yards, because I do believe, like, I wholeheartedly believe, just looking at the market share, I do wholeheartedly believe Gerald Everett gets around 15 to 20%, maybe on the lower end of 15 to 20% of the market share. I do believe DK and Tyler Lockett, lock up about 50% of the market share all around. So in this example, that puts them at these numbers. I think I just need to nerf a little bit of what the total numbers are going to be and be more realistic with how much they're really going to ask Russell Wilson to throw the football.
But I don't think it's that far off though. I really don't.
Yeah. So I'll adjust it a little bit. We'll look at it. That was fun. See, that's what I wanted from this process, to really kind of dive into and see, okay, what am I missing? What am I too high on? What am I too low on? Things like that. I think that's a lot of fun. I think this time of the year, embrace collaboration as much as possible with rankings and things like that. And I also have always liked the idea of being as open as we can with our audience. And as we're growing our audience, I want to take every opportunity I can to do that. So I hope you guys appreciate that. I hope that the comments have continually been awesome. So I expect to see at least somewhat kindness, even if you disagree. That's fine. People can disagree the right way. You know what I mean? So I'm expecting that. I'm hopeful for that. So guys, thank you so much. We're gonna get out of here. We got 15 minutes on the card, and we're gonna wrap it up. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please check back next week. Not sure, we're gonna go back to AFC. Not sure which division we're gonna do yet, but you'll see next week when we put it out. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Peace out.
Thank you. 7.